I don't go out much anymore. When I do, it's never alone, and it's never to places where the music's too loud to hear myself think. There was a time, though, when I liked that kind of thing. Loud, crowded clubs that blurred the edges of everything, made the world feel big and bright and untouchable for a while. This happened back when I was 23, and I thought I could handle myself. I thought I was careful. It was a Saturday night, one of those muggy summer nights where the air clings to your skin and you sweat through your makeup before you even make it inside. My best friend, Jessa, had convinced me to go out with her and a few of her coworkers from the cafe. I wasn't really in the mood for it, but she begged, and I figured it would be good to get out of my head for a night. The place was called Red Line, one of those converted warehouse kind of clubs. Concrete floors, exposed beams, thudding bass so heavy it shook through your bones. When we got there, the line outside snaked down the block. Bouncers in black shirts scanned IDs under a red floodlight, faces blank and bored. Inside, the air was a hot, alcoholic haze. Neon strobes flashed across walls slick with condensation. People pressed shoulder to shoulder, moving like a single living organism to the rhythm. It smelled like sweat, perfume, and something metallic, like blood, though that might have just been my imagination. I stuck close to Jessa and her crew. They were laughing, already half drunk, slipping into the dance crowd while I hung back near the bar. I like watching people. I like feeling invisible sometimes. That's probably what drew him to me. I noticed him about 20 minutes after we got there. He was standing a few feet away, leaning against the pillar by the bar, just staring, not scanning the crowd the way most guys do, not smiling, just watching me. Tall, pale, black button-down tucked into slacks, which already felt off. Most people were in ripped jeans, crop tops, glitter. He looked like he'd just stepped out of an office building and wandered into the wrong place. His hair was slicked back, dark and damp, like he'd run wet hands through it. And his eyes, gray, flat, like slate. I caught his gaze by accident, and he didn't look away. Not even when I looked back, then down at my drink, then back again. Still staring. A little spike of unease went through me. I shifted, turned my body toward the dance floor, and pretended to look for Jessa. When I glanced back, he was closer. Just a few feet away now, pushing through the crowd without looking anywhere except at me. I moved, quickly. I slipped between people, found Jessa by the edge of the dance floor, grabbed her arm. "Hey!" I shouted over the music, "that guy over there." But when I pointed, he was gone. Jessa laughed it off. "You're cute, of course, some guy's staring. Want me to wing-woman?" "No," I said too quickly. "It's fine." I tried to shake it off. We danced for a while. I even started to loosen up, laughing when Jessa spun me, spilling half my drink down my arm. The music swallowed my thoughts, and for a while I forgot about him, until someone brushed behind me, too close. Not just a bump, a slow, deliberate drag along my lower back. I spun around. It was him. He was inches away, his face blank, those gray eyes locked on me. His lips curled in the smallest, coldest smile. I jolted back, my stomach dropping. "Don't touch me." I had to shout it to be heard, and even then I wasn't sure he caught the words, but he understood. He just stood there, smiling. Jessa saw my face then. She stepped between us immediately, all sharp elbows and fearless energy. "Back off," she snapped. He didn't move. "Seriously, dude," she said. "Walk away." That smile didn't change. A bouncer passed by and Jessa waved him over. I think that broke the spell because the guy finally stepped back like he was obeying an invisible signal and just melted into the crowd. The bouncer escorted him out after we explained what happened. I watched them go, feeling shaky and stupidly relieved. Jessa looped an arm around me. "You okay?" "Yeah," I lied. We stayed another half hour. I wanted to leave, but she was having fun and I didn't want to ruin her night. By the time we called a rideshare, I'd convinced myself it was over. Creeps happen. This one was gone. I was wrong. My apartment was on the 3rd floor of an old brick building on the edge of downtown. Quiet street, burnt-out streetlights, cracked sidewalks. The rideshare dropped me at the corner. Jessa had gone home with her coworker, so it was just me. The air was heavy and still. I kicked off my heels as soon as I hit the stairwell, grateful for the silence. My feet hurt. My head buzzed. I just wanted to wash off the sweat and crawl into bed. I unlocked my door, stepped inside, and froze. Something was off. Not anything I could name at first. The air just felt wrong. Too cold, too still. I checked the deadbolt. Still locked. Windows latched, everything in place. I told myself I was being paranoid, drunk and paranoid. I showered, put on an old t-shirt, and curled up on the couch with a glass of water. The TV glowed soft and blue across the room. I almost convinced myself I was fine. Then I saw movement outside the window, just a flicker at the edge of my vision. I turned my head slowly, heart pounding. Across the street, half hidden in the shadow between two parked cars, someone was standing, tall, still, watching. I stood up so fast the glass of water tipped and spilled across the carpet. I flicked off the lamp, hoping the darkness would hide me, pressed my face to the window. He was still there. Even from across the street, I knew it was him. Those gray eyes caught the faint glow of the streetlight like dull coins. I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and dialed 911. By the time the dispatcher picked up, he was gone. Just gone. Like he'd dissolved into the dark. The operator told me to stay inside, to lock the doors, and they'd send a patrol car by. A cruiser rolled past maybe 10 minutes later, lights off, just coasting down the street. I don't know if they even got out. After that, the block was empty. I barely slept that night. The next day, I told myself it had been nothing. A trick of the light. My mind still jittery from adrenaline and cheap vodka. I didn't see him again for 3 days. I'd just gotten home from work. Sun still up. I was unlocking my door when I heard footsteps on the stairs behind me. I glanced over my shoulder. He was halfway up the stairwell, the same black shirt, the same blank face. I bolted inside, slammed the door, threw the deadbolt, then the chain. My hands shook so hard I fumbled the locks. He didn't try to force the door. Instead, he stopped on the landing. Just stood there. Then, softly, like he knew I was listening, he dragged his fingertips down my door. Slow, deliberate, shh, shh, then silence. When I finally found the courage to look through the peephole, the landing was empty. I called the cops again. They took a statement this time, promised to increase patrol presence. I didn't believe them. I started checking every window lock twice. I bought a door jammer, slept with the lights on. It didn't matter. He was always there, sometimes outside on the sidewalk, just far enough that I couldn't be sure it was him, sometimes across the street, half hidden behind the bus stop. Once I saw him in the lobby mirror when the elevator doors opened, standing by the mailboxes, staring at my reflection. When I whipped around, the space was empty. He never tried to speak, never came closer than that first night at the club. But he watched, and he was patient. The police stopped answering my calls. Friends stopped coming over. Jessa told me maybe I should talk to someone, that maybe I'd developed anxiety. Then she came by one evening to prove a point. "Look," she said, stepping out onto my balcony. "Nobody's there." She stood there with her hands on the railing, scanning the street. I stayed just inside the doorway. Stomach knotted. "See?" she said. "Nothing." Then her voice faltered, because he stepped out from behind the corner street lamp, just strolled into view like he'd been waiting for her to challenge him. She went still. "Oh my God," she whispered. He just looked up at us, tilted his head. Then, without breaking eye contact, he reached up and traced a slow line across his own throat with one finger. Jessa yanked me back inside and slammed the balcony door. She stayed with me that night. Neither of us slept. The next morning, she made me pack a bag and stay at her place for a few days. It felt safe for a while, until the third night. We were watching a movie on her couch. The curtains were drawn. Her phone buzzed. She frowned. "Did you call a car?" "No." She held up the screen. Her rideshare app was open. A trip was en route to pick her up, scheduled from her address. To mine. We stared at it. Then her phone buzzed again. A notification from my smart lock system. Front door unlocked. My blood went cold. We hadn't been there in days. We called the cops, but by the time they got there, the door was locked again. No signs of forced entry. Nothing missing. But I knew he'd been inside. Probably still had a copy of the key from God knows where. That night, I dreamed about waking up with him standing at the foot of my bed. I woke up sweating, gasping, clawing at the blankets. That was when I decided I couldn't wait for this to end. I had to end it. I bought a can of pepper spray and kept it on me constantly. I changed the locks, installed a camera over my door, set motion alarms on my windows, and I stopped hiding. Instead of peeking from behind the curtains, I stood in the window and stared back when he appeared. And he did appear, almost every night. It became a standoff. He'd stand across the street for hours, completely still, until dawn paled the sky. I'd watch from my window, hands shaking around the pepper spray. Some nights he wouldn't come. Those were worse, because I knew he was somewhere, waiting. This went on for weeks. Then one night, he broke pattern. It was just past midnight. I was in the kitchen when I heard the faint scrape of my balcony door sliding. I froze. The motion alarm didn't go off, which meant he'd disabled it. My phone was charging across the room. I grabbed the pepper spray and ducked behind the counter, heart slamming against my ribs. Footsteps. Soft. Slow. Inside. He was in my apartment. I crept toward the hallway. Every instinct screamed to run, but I knew if I made a sound, he'd find me. Then, out of the darkness, a voice. Soft. Calm. You shouldn't have made this hard. My blood turned to ice. I bolted. Straight through the living room, yanking the front door open so hard it cracked the plaster. Bare feet pounding the stairs, 3 flights down, out into the night. I didn't stop running until I hit the corner store 6 blocks away. The clerk called the cops for me. When they arrived, they found nothing. No sign of forced entry, no footprints. But the balcony door was wide open. And on the wall beside it, scrawled in something dark, was a single word. Mine. That was 2 years ago. I moved, changed my name on the lease. Different city, different job, different everything. I never saw him again. But sometimes late at night, walking home from work, I catch myself scanning every shadow, every still figure in the dark, because if he ever finds me again, I know he won't just watch this time. I worked the late shift at Burger King. I used to think it was the easiest gig in the world. Minimal customer interaction compared to day shifts, nobody breathing down your neck about drive-through times. And usually, it was just me, the fry cook, and a manager who hid in the back doing paperwork. But ever since last month, I can't relax at work anymore. It started with him. The first time I noticed him, it was just after 11 p.m., that dead hour where the dinner rush is over and the drunk crowd hasn't stumbled in yet. I was wiping down the counter when the door chimed. He walked in slow, like he was taking in every detail of the place. Tall, stringy, maybe late 30s. He had that unwashed look, like someone who doesn't shower every day but thinks deodorant is a personality. He wore a black hoodie with the hood up, even though it was warm out, and old jeans that sagged at the knees. He didn't order right away, just stood there at the counter staring at me. I put on my customer service smile. Hi, welcome to Burger King. What can I get for you? He blinked, slow, like it took a second for the words to register. Then he smiled. Something about that smile put every hair on my neck on edge. Whopper, no onions, he said. I punched it in, told him the total, and took his crumpled bills. His fingernails were dirty. While he waited, he just watched me. Not in the way bored customers do, but like he was studying my face, my hands, memorizing me. When I called his order, he didn't leave. He just stood by the soda machine, unwrapping his burger, eating it one slow bite at a time, his eyes following me everywhere I went. When he finally walked out, I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. Creeper? The fry cook, Terry, asked from the back. Yeah, I said, shoving my rag into the sanitizer bucket. But I figured that was the end of it. It wasn't. He came back the next night, and the night after that. Always late, always ordering the same thing. By the 4th night, he knew my name. Hi, Grace, he said as he stepped up to the counter. My stomach dropped. I never wear my name tag. How do you know my name? I asked before I could stop myself. That smile again. It's on your schedule in the window. I looked. Sure enough, our manager posted the weekly schedule facing out so employees could check it after hours. Anyone walking by could see all our names and exactly when we'd be there. I told my boss the next day. She shrugged. We've had worse. So he kept coming back. Sometimes he tried to make small talk. You always work this shift? You must get bored here. You ever go out after work? I'd keep my answers short, polite, smile without smiling. Hope he'd get bored and stop showing up. He didn't. One night, when I went out to dump the trash, I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around, heart hammering. He was standing by the corner of the building, just out of reach of the security light. Hi, Grace, he said softly. You can't be back here, I snapped, clutching the trash bag like a shield. He tilted his head. Just wanted to talk. I'm working. He smiled wider, showing too many teeth. See you tomorrow. Then he walked off into the dark. I told my boss again. She sighed, told me to take someone out with me for trash runs. That was it. A week later, he came in right at closing time. The dining room was already roped off, but he stood there at the door until I unlocked it. I just wanted to say hi, he said. We're closed. I told him, keeping my voice firm. He stepped closer. You look tired tonight. That was when Terry came up from the back and said, Hey man, she said we're closed. You need to go. Something shifted in his face then. The smile dropped. His jaw clenched. He left without another word. I thought maybe that would be the end of it. It wasn't. The next night, I got off at 2 a.m. and walked to my car. It was parked under the far light pole, away from the building. Halfway there, I noticed something on my windshield. A note. Just a single sheet of paper, folded once. I stood there under the buzzing light, staring at it, stomach turning. I picked it up with shaking hands. In messy block letters, it said, I know what time you get off. I ran back inside and made Terry walk me out again. We searched the lot, but he was gone. I started parking closer to the door after that. I started checking under my car before I got in, just in case. The next week, I found something worse. A Polaroid photo tucked under my wiper. It was me, from the night before, taking orders at the counter, my head turned just enough that you could see my face clearly. Taken from inside the restaurant. I told my boss again, this time near tears. She finally agreed to call the police. An officer came by, took a statement, glanced at the photo and said, Probably just some lonely guy. Avoid him if you can. Then he left. 2 nights later, the guy came back. I felt my stomach drop the second he walked through the door. But this time, he didn't go to the counter. He just stood there in the entryway, staring. When I didn't say anything, he slowly reached into his pocket, pulled out a phone, and took my picture. No smile this time. No words. Just turned and walked out. I was shaking so hard I had to go in the back and sit down. I didn't see him for a few days after that. But every night, I felt like I was being watched. When I walked to my car, I'd see a figure at the edge of the lot, just far enough in the dark that I couldn't be sure it was him. When I got home, I'd double-lock the door, but sometimes I'd wake up in the middle of the night, convinced I heard footsteps outside my window. Then came the night. Everything broke. It was just after 1 a.m. Terry had gone out back for a smoke. The manager was in the office. I was restocking sauces when the door chimed. I turned. He was standing there, hood up, smiling again. But this time, he wasn't alone. He was holding something in his hand, a baseball bat. Where's your friend? He asked softly. My throat went dry. You need to leave. He took a step closer. I just want to talk. I backed toward the office, heart pounding. I'm calling the police. He laughed. You think they care about you? He was halfway across the floor when Terry came back in through the kitchen door. What the hell are you doing, man? The guy turned toward him, gripping the bat tighter. That was enough for me. I ran, straight into the office, slammed the door, locked it, grabbed the phone, and dialed 911. By the time the cops showed up, he was gone, vanished into the night like he'd never been there. They took the bat, took our statements, and said they'd keep an eye out. That was 3 weeks ago. I quit my job the next day. I moved back in with my mom. But I still see him sometimes. Not up close, just far enough away that I can't prove it's him. Across the parking lot at the grocery store, standing on the corner when I leave the dentist. Always watching. Always smiling. I started going to the gym because I was tired of feeling invisible. I was 23, working a boring office job, spending most of my days hunched over spreadsheets and surviving off vending machine food. One day, my reflection in the bathroom mirror startled me. My skin was pale and soft, my arms were thin, and I looked like someone who never saw daylight. I wanted to change that, even if it was just to feel like I existed in the world again. So I joined a gym. It was a local place, not one of those huge chains, which made it feel more personal, friendly. The kind of place where people nodded at each other when they passed, and the staff greeted you by name after a week. That first week was awkward, but after the soreness faded, I started to enjoy it. The smell of rubber mats, the clang of weights, the low thump of music, it became comforting. And then I noticed him. The first time, it was subtle. I was on the treadmill, sweating through my shirt, when my eyes wandered and landed on him. He was standing near the dumbbell rack, just standing there, not lifting anything, staring at me. His eyes were locked on me like I was the only thing in the room. I looked away fast. Everyone glances at people in the gym, checking form, stealing a look, whatever. But this was different. It was unblinking, sharp, like I was prey. He was tall, maybe late 30s, shaved head, and thin in a way that made his clothes hang loose like they didn't quite belong to him. His skin was pale, almost gray, and he didn't sweat. Not even a sheen. The next day, he was there again. This time, when I walked in, he was already on a bike. He didn't pedal. He just sat there and watched me walk past. And when I started stretching, he got off the bike and stood by the cable machines, pretending to check the attachments, eyes fixed on me in the mirror's reflection. Every time I glanced his way, he was already looking at me. I told myself I was imagining it. Paranoid. People watch other people at the gym all the time. It didn't mean anything. But then he started showing up everywhere I was. If I moved to the squat rack, he'd wander nearby and lean against the wall. If I switched to machines, he'd stand at the next one over, not using it, just standing, never talking, never touching a thing. One night, I stayed later than usual. Most people had gone home. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the music had stopped playing because the staff had started cleaning. I was alone, wiping down the bench press, when I heard footsteps. Slow, deliberate. I turned, and he was standing by the door, watching me. We locked eyes for what felt like forever. He didn't blink. His mouth hung slightly open, and his head tilted just a little, like he was trying to figure out what I would do if he lunged. I grabbed my bag and left without looking back. After that, I started seeing him outside the gym. The first time, I thought it was coincidence. I left after my workout, crossed the parking lot, and got in my car. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing at the edge of the lot, hands in his pockets, looking at my car. I drove off, heart hammering. 2 nights later, I went to grab groceries after work, and as I left the store, I saw him across the street, just standing there under the orange glow of the streetlight, staring. I froze. The plastic grocery bag dug into my palm. He didn't move. I crossed the lot fast, got in my car, and locked the doors. My fingers were shaking so hard I almost dropped the keys. When I looked up, he was gone. I told the gym staff. The manager, a bubbly guy named Carl, said, "Oh, that's probably Vince. He's quiet but harmless." Harmless? I said. He doesn't work out. He just stares at me the entire time I'm here, and now he's following me. Carl raised an eyebrow. Following you? Yes, I said, voice rising. I saw him outside the grocery store and in the parking lot. He just stands there. Carl frowned, but tried to laugh it off. I'll talk to him. Probably just has a crush. A crush. Like that made it okay. That night, I parked a few blocks away from my apartment, just in case. I didn't want him knowing where I lived. I carried my keys between my knuckles as I walked, eyes scanning the shadows. No one. I got inside, locked every lock, and left all the lights on. At 3 a.m., I woke up to a sound. A faint scraping from my balcony. I live on the 3rd floor. My heart pounded so hard I felt it in my teeth. I crept to the sliding glass door. The curtain was drawn, but I saw a shape, a silhouette pressed against the glass, crouched low. Someone was on my balcony. I didn't breathe. Then, slowly, the silhouette stood up, and I saw his face. Vince. His hands were flat on the glass, and he was smiling. I stumbled backward, grabbed my phone, and dialed 911. My voice came out as a strangled whisper. By the time the cops arrived, he was gone. No footprints, no sign of forced entry. They didn't believe me. Said maybe it was a trick of the light or I'd been dreaming. But I knew what I saw. I stopped going to the gym. I stopped going anywhere. I called in sick, stayed home, kept my blinds closed, days blurred, nights stretched out, brittle and silent. Then, after almost a week, I heard from Carl. He called me. "Hey," he said, voice shaky. Remember that guy you were worried about? Vince? Yeah, I said cautiously. He hasn't been in all week. But what? Carl lowered his voice. Cops came by today asking about him. My stomach dropped. Why? They found a storage unit in his name. Said it was full of weird stuff. Women's clothes, shoes, IDs from different women. And he trailed off. And what, Carl? They found a freezer, he whispered. With parts, human parts. I felt like the floor disappeared under me. I thanked him numbly and hung up. Then I threw up in the sink. That night, I didn't sleep. Every creak made me jump. Every passing car's headlights slicing through the blinds made my chest seize. At 4 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It was a photo of me, sleeping. My blood ran cold. I checked my locks, my windows, everything. Nothing was broken. Nothing was open. He had been inside, while I was asleep. I called the police again, sobbing. This time, they took me seriously. They sent 2 officers to stay while they searched the building. Nothing. They left, promising to patrol the area. I didn't believe them. 2 days later, I packed a bag and drove to a motel outside town. Dingy place, but it had 2 locks on the door and a security camera on the lot. I stayed there, barely eating, barely moving. On the 3rd night, someone knocked on the door. 3 soft taps. I froze. Another 3 taps. "Housekeeping," a voice said. My breath caught. Housekeeping didn't come this late. I stayed silent. The doorknob rattled. Then it stopped, and I heard footsteps walking away. I waited 10 minutes, then looked through the peephole. Empty. When I turned back, there was a note slipped under the door. In neat block letters, "You can't hide." I lost it. I started screaming, throwing things, tearing the room apart, looking for hidden cameras. I called the police again, but by the time they got there, the note was gone. They searched my room. Nothing. They probably thought I was losing my mind. The next morning, I decided to end it. I went back to the gym. If he was watching, if he wanted me, I would draw him out. It felt insane, but it was the only way. I walked in like nothing had happened, smiled at the staff, signed in, and there he was, standing by the squat rack, watching me, like he'd never been gone. I felt ice spread through my chest, but I forced my feet to move. I warmed up, stretching, doing light sets, pretending not to notice him. My hands shook. Then I went to the locker room, ducked inside, and waited. Sure enough, after a few minutes, the door creaked. Footsteps, slow, careful. I crouched behind a row of lockers, heart pounding, clutching the heavy metal lock I'd brought as a weapon. His footsteps stopped, silence. Then, breathing. Right on the other side of the lockers, I could see his shoes beneath the gap. He stood there for a long, terrible moment. Then he whispered, "I saved a place for you." I lunged out screaming, swinging the lock. It smashed into his face. Blood sprayed. He staggered back and I ran, bolting out of the locker room barefoot out the door into the parking lot. Behind me, I heard him laughing, a high, ragged, broken sound. I dove into my car, slammed the doors, hit the locks. He burst out of the gym, blood pouring down his face, and ran straight at me. I floored it. He hit the side of my car with a thud and rolled off as I sped away. I didn't stop. Police caught him 3 days later. They found him in a storage unit an hour away, surrounded by plastic-wrapped bodies. 7 women, some of them still wearing gym clothes. They said if I hadn't fought back, if I hadn't run, I would have been the 8th. Sometimes I think about the night I first saw him, the way he stood by the dumbbells, just watching. I wonder how many of the others saw him like that too. How many thought it was nothing. Just a quiet guy at the gym.